Okay, good evening everyone. Welcome to Overview and Scrutiny Committee. This meeting is due to take place earlier in the month but was postponed due to all the election activity, and this was the earliest date we could rearrange. So thank you very much for those of you who've come in on this glorious sunny evening. First of all, do we have apologies and substitutions, please? Councillor Ellis?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Michelle Walsh on parliamentary business and also Councillor David Brocklebank, who unfortunately wasn't able to make the alternative date. Thank you.
And welcome.
We have substitution, Paul Feeney, for Michelle. Welcome to Councillor Feeney. Yes, Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Councillor Lorraine Brown is on her way, but she'll be joining later.
Oh, somebody's here. Okay, so first of all then, we've got the minutes from the last meeting on the 22nd of April. Are there any matters of accuracy people wish to raise? No, so can I move that these are an accurate record of the meeting, please? And Councillor Rachel Ellis is seconding. All those in favour? Thank you. Anyone against? Well, that's carried then. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest for the meeting? Please, Councillor Ellis.
Just for transparency, although I presume it's well known by now, but I am related to Councillor Ellis, who's giving the presentation.
And I assume Councillor Roxanne Ellis is going to declare a similar interest.
Exactly the same, thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We were supposed to be having an external person coming to be scrutinised. Can you explain? A partner coming for scrutiny on the original date of this meeting, but because we had to change the meeting, they're now no longer able to attend, so they will attend at a future date. So that does mean that the agenda is a bit shorter today. I doubt anybody would complain about that, though. So if we move on to the next item then, which is part of our regular programme of portfolio holders attendance, and Councillor David Ellis is coming this evening to talk to us about his portfolio public protection, and he's brought some officers with him who I'm hoping he will introduce to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the invitation to attend. Just to introduce the officers here, we've got Sam Palmer, who's the Food, Health and Housing Manager on the far side, and Kevin Neelan, my brain's gone blank already, Kevin Neelan, who's the Community Protection Manager. We've also got apologies from Mark Stanley, who's the neighbourhood policing inspector, who was planning to be here, but he's ill, unfortunately. The next slide shows you my portfolio. You can see on there the areas that in the portfolio. It's quite a wide-ranging portfolio. But you'd be pleased to know that I'm only going to concentrate on a couple of areas. So the couple of areas being the crime and community safety data and food, health and housing. So if we move on a couple of slides. I know this is going to be difficult for you to see, but with there being so many new members to the committee, I thought it was important that we talk about how we measure crime. Because although crime and antisocial behaviour in itself is not particularly our responsibility at Borough, obviously every local authority has responsibility for doing what we can to to reduce crime, and we work closely in partnership with the police, and naturally with your perspective, you want to know what the crime levels are. So essentially there are two ways of measuring crime. One is police recorded crime, which is the figures that mostly get published and get talked about. The difficulty with these is that they're dependent on on police recording practice. So as police recording practice changes, the stats change. So I'll give you one example. For a while, the Home Office is very precise about counting rules, and for a while they'd changed the counting rules so that burglaries in sheds counted as part of burglary domestic burglaries. So the figures for domestic burglaries went up significantly. But I think to most of us will see there's a significant difference between breaking into a garage and breaking into your home. The other way of measuring crime is the crime survey, which is an annual survey of 30,000 people based on their experience of crime. And this is, as it says, a survey, so it asks people, have you been a victim of crime over the last year? So you can see there that measures different sorts of crime. It's not good at some crimes. It's not good at homicides. It's not good at crimes against businesses. It's not good against crimes against young people because it's 18-year-olds and above. It does pick up the high-volume, low-intensity crimes, which sometimes the police recorded crimes don't pick up. So you'll see on the slide on the left-hand side, the yellow figure, the yellow line, is the crime survey for England and Wales. And you can see back at the beginning, which was 2002, 2003, it was the blue line is police recorded crime. So you can see that the crime survey crime levels were something like 3 times the level of recorded crime. You can see that came down over the years, and the crime survey rates came down faster than the recorded crime rates. Then 2014, the Home Office tightened up the recording rules, and you can see that recorded crime started to increase, whereas the crime survey crime decreased. And if you look on the second slide, on the right-hand side, that's been rebased. So the red line, 2014, is an index of 100. So you can see how it came down from prior to that, from 22, 23, and then diverged in 2014 with recorded crime going up. So this is basically just to say, treat all recorded crime, all crime figures with a pinch of salt, and particularly when it's very short-term figures. You know, people sometimes jump about. On my portfolio, Mark Stanley comes every month and presents the local crime figures, but we know enough not to jump about for the fact that something's happened in a particular month. The next slide shows just the issue of policing numbers, which has been an issue of contention. So you'll see there, starting from 2010, the reduction in the number of police officers, which is the blue line, police staff, which is the green line, and PCSOs, which is the red line. And you can see the significant decline with 20,000 fewer police officers by 2019. And that there was a lot of loss of experience in that time. A lot of experienced police officers left, and we knew there was a lot of pressure on the police. Then the last government started to address that by increasing the number of police officers. So you'll see the number of police officers, blue line, the 20,000 police officers that were restored went up, but the number of police per head, which is the line that shows, is still lower than it was in 2010. You can see police staff numbers have increased, but PCSOs have still declined. And I know that was something that lots of people were particularly pleased about, having PCSOs, as they were people you saw on the streets. They've now disappeared from the streets, as they've disappeared from policing. That's just to give you an overview of crime. But try and look at what's happening with crime in Nottinghamshire.
Are you happy?
Sorry to interrupt, David. Are you okay to take questions as you go along? Because I was going to say that's obviously a national picture. Do you know what the local picture is with PCSOs? Because my perception, and it is a perception, that the numbers have been increasing in PCSOs rather than declining in recent. Yes, it certainly. Yeah, certainly in my ward.
Those figures are clear that the number of PCSOs nationally has declined. I think there's been a lot of efforts locally to strengthen neighbourhood teams. So I know we've had discussions about the policing in your area. So I know there's been increasing patrols there. So it's good that you've seen them.
Yeah, and all due respect, whilst I'm interested in what's going on in Gateshead, I'm actually more concerned what's going on in Gedling Borough and Nottinghamshire. But perhaps if you could possibly find out what the figures are locally, that would be appreciated, please. Thank you.
So looking at the what's happening to crime in Nottinghamshire, which is why I gave you the handout, because there's no way can you make sense of this this picture. But essentially, these are police recorded crimes for the last year, provided by the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner. The PCC produces an annual police and crime needs assessment, which is really interesting. It's worth having a read. It talks about the causes of crime, talks about the different factors, deprivation, education levels, and the nature of crime and community safety in Nottinghamshire. One of the things that the assessment concludes, the most recent assessment, is that antisocial behaviour is the most common community safety issue affecting local residents. And they estimate that somewhere possibly 64% of residents are likely to have experienced one or more forms of ASB over the previous year. But they also found that 74% of those who experienced ASB didn't report it to any agency. About 16% reported it to the local authority and 13% to the police. The most prevalent ASB issue is neighbourhood noise nuisance, followed by vehicle-related ASB and local and drug use. So you see the pattern there, and if I look on the next slide, which brings it down to Gedling, it's a very similar pattern. Obviously the levels are lower, but I say the detailed spreadsheet shows you the last 3 years' figures, and the most significant areas, or the largest areas to my mind, are the violence against the person, which represents nearly half of all crime. That covers a whole range of things, from the major offences, homicides, to relatively minor assaults. Theft is on an upward trend. You see there a 7% increase in across the county, and just slightly under for the borough. And that covers burglary, vehicle thefts, bicycle thefts, shoplifting. And you'd be aware that the previous government had accepted the Co-op group and the USDO's campaign on shop workers, but unfortunately that bit of legislation fell, so I hope the new government will pick that one up. There's a group of offences around domestic occurrences, domestic crimes, stalking and harassment, and sexual offences. And although not exclusively a women's issue, women and girls are a large share of proportion of the victims of those crimes. You have seen that in July, the College of Policing issued what it called a call for action on violence against women and girls. Just to give some idea of the scale, they talk about over 1 million Vogue-related crimes recorded in 22-23, which is something like 3,000 a day. And 20% of all recorded crimes are violence against women and girls, and we know that a lot of that is underrepresented, underrecorded anyway. And 1 in 6 murders are related to domestic abuse. So the College of Policing and the Police Chiefs Council are going to make a bigger effort on violence against women and girls, a whole system approach using the voluntary sector and local authorities.
Councillor Pope had a question.
Thank you. Just so I can understand exactly what I'm looking at here, David. These bars, are they reported crimes or are they crimes that lead to a prosecution?
They're reported crimes.
And would a reported crime potentially appear in more than one of these categories? I'm thinking, for instance, violence against a person. If it was also a domestic, would it appear in both or just one?
I don't think so. I asked the same question. The recording rules, you say it should only be it should only be in one place, with the exception of things like hate crimes and domestic, which can occur in a couple of places.
Right. And the proportion of these figures wouldn't lead to a subsequent prosecution or caution. These are just reported.
These are just reported crimes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. The table on the chart on the right-hand side shows the level of crime in Gedling and the level of ASB in Gedling. So ASB, as you're probably aware, is defined as something acting in a manner that causes or is likely to cause harassment, alarm, or distress, which is quite a wide description, but it is something that does have a serious impact on communities. Next slide.
Councillor Whiting has a question.
Thanks, Chair. David, is any consideration given to any underlying reasons behind why Gedling seems to have a higher proportion of some crimes relative to population than the county? So, like some of these figures, we're kind of responsible for, or we account for, more than 10% of these figures, sometimes 15%. Do you do any analysis with the force as to kind of underlying factors as to why some incidents might be more prevalent in the borough than others, or than elsewhere in the county?
This is part of the role of the data team at the PCC's office. So yes, they look at hotspots, and basically there are 3 community safety partnerships: the South Nottinghamshire, Mansfield and Bassalau. Mansfield, Ashfield, and Bassalau, Newark, and Bassalau and Newark, and we do look at those across those areas. I think that they're more meaningful than looking at across the whole county. So, for instance, the South Knot, we look at what's happening in Rushcliffe and Broxtowe and Gedling. And the next slide. So it's Mark Stanley's responsibility to identify local policing priorities, and as you know, he consults with the council, and he always welcomes input from local members on particular areas. So he does a quarterly update of the local policing priorities, and those are the 3 current ones. So first one, Operation Silver Birch, looks at ASB and knife crime in Arnold, particularly Front Street. And there's several suspects who are currently on bail for offences linked to weapons, GBH, around there. Operation Spear Shaft looks at drug supply and child criminal exploitation in Calverton. It's all right with the supply of controlled drugs, violence linked to weapon use, and the risk of county lines and child criminal exploitation. Then the last one is a relatively recent one. It's been an increase in theft from motor vehicles, theft of motor vehicles, burglary in dwellings around the Daybrook area, sort of Daybrook, Oxclose Lane, Valley Road area. And that's been dealt with through Operation Battle Scar. Most of these, you'll find that the police have got a strong idea of who the perpetrators are and where they're happening. It goes back to the analysis of the data, and they will be patrolling and using opportunities to disrupt known offenders when they can. But as I say, I talk to the Mark Stanley every month as part of the portfolio meeting, and we talk about these priorities and agree that they're the ones, and then we see what we can do as an authority, mostly through Kevin's team, to supplement this work. I thought it was timely to bring this to your attention. Each police and crime commissioner, well, their prime duty is to produce a police and crime plan. The new police and crime commissioner is currently consulting on the plan, and he'd welcome any views that members have on the members or the public have on the priorities. And you can see the three main areas there. Putting communities and victims first, strengthening work with partner agencies, and ensuring efficient and resilient policing. You'll also be aware that he's taken over responsibility for the police at a difficult time for Nottinghamshire Police, that we've just had the Peel review, which is the Police Efficiency, Effectiveness and Legitimacy review. And in March, the Nottinghamshire Police was put into enhanced monitoring because of the poor quality of investigations and problems with governance. The Peel review full review has been published, and it considers that we're inadequate at preventing and investigating crime and management, and we require improvement on protecting vulnerable people. So there is some work to be done. Part of the problem is that Nottinghamshire Police is funded as a county force, which it's a rural area, isn't it? But has the pressures of an urban force, particularly the Nottingham and the inner city areas and areas of high deprivation. Essentially, resources are not keeping pace with demand, plus the cuts to other services, will affect the demand on the police. Some of the local priorities we talk about are things like needing youth services and all that sort of thing that's disappeared, and a lot of it falls down to the police. The other interesting thing that came out of the Peel review, to my mind, is that they identify that neighbourhood policing is subject to abstractions, and that the police can never be guaranteed how many police officers are going to be around, because they could be taken off to police football matches, which is one of the downsides of having a Premier League football team. More football-related trouble. But that's just a very quick skirt over policing. Don't know if anybody wants to ask questions at this point before we move on.
Councillor Smith.
Thanks, David. Just on the Police and Crime Commissioner, you've said they've got a really important job to do, particularly turning around the force. What's your view on them? I think today it was announced they're spending 62 grand on a deputy rather than investing it into putting communities and victims first.
Sorry, Sam, I can't hear you.
You've said about the Police and Crime Commissioner and the crime plan, and they've got a lot of work to do. I think today one of his first decisions in role was to employ a deputy on 62 grand a year, which the other crime commissioner didn't need. What's your view on that? Should the money be spent on this instead?
The previous government was requiring police and crime commissioners to have deputies, and I know Caroline didn't intend to until she was forced to, so that would have come as well. I think my view is I'm personally sceptical about one person authorities, whether it's mayors or police and crime commissioners, and I can see it being a very, very lonely job, and I can see the need for them to have a team around them. So.
Sorry, Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Not a difficult one. I'm not going to put you on the spot, David. Certainly the local officers are very keen to work with the local community, and I know you said that's one of the intentions of the Police and Crime Commissioner. I'm assuming it's been happening in other parishes and perhaps in the urban areas about consultation events, police surgeries. So certainly we've had them in Newstead Abbey ward in all 4 parishes. Certainly Ravenshead has had one. The second one, the beat officer didn't turn up and didn't tell anybody he wasn't coming. But I think he's probably had his knuckles wrapped, and there's a third one planned. But the common theme, and if Mark Stanley had been here, I would have said this to him, the common theme is that they're not sending out any reminders to the public. They're not publicising these police surgeries very well. It's great that they're having them, but let's tell the public that they're having them. It shouldn't be down to parish councils, for instance, to publicise a police event. So again, it's not a criticism of you. You speak to Mark probably, obviously, more than I do. Perhaps you could just pass that one on, please.
I certainly will. I mean, I have had conversations with him, not so much about formal surgeries, more as being available. I'm saying, there are places around the borough that police officers could make a point of popping into to be seen. And I was saying things like the St George's Centre in Netherfield and various other places that they could be seen, be known to be there. But I suppose the only thing I would say, there's no excuse for not sending apologies. But I do know that part of the problem with the neighbourhood policing and the abstractions is it still has to be responsive. And if they get called to a serious incident, then unfortunately surgeries have to go by the board.
No, but you're totally right. Dropping in, we encourage police officers to call into Ravenshead Leisure Centre to use the toilet, just like we do with the neighbourhood wardens. They do, they need to have a comfort break occasionally, and somebody will make them a cup of tea. But whilst they're doing that, the van's being seen, both the Gedling van or in the previous case, a police car. So, yeah, let's encourage it more and more.
And there's always the little bit of quiet intelligence that they pick up by talking to people. Yeah, okay. Right. Shall we move on to the second part, which is talking about various areas of environmental health that I'm not sure necessarily get a great deal of publicity. I'm not sure members are necessarily that aware of them, so I thought you might be interested in knowing these. But then I start with the first one that you will have seen, which is the food hygiene rating scheme. And you'll all food businesses are inspected and are rated, and you will see that a lot of them have the 5-star rating on their doors or in bars. They tend not to have the ratings if it's lower level, but they're quite proud when they get high level. So what the hygiene rating scheme covers, it covers hygienic food handling, preparation, cooking, cleanliness and condition of facilities and building, and the management of food safety. It's not a taste test. It's purely on food hygiene. And there are some businesses that are exempt, but we do have 689 food businesses in the borough. 96% of them, as you'll seen from the papers that were circulated, are either 5-star or 4-star. So that's very good or good. Nearly 4% are generally satisfactory, and 3 are rated improvement necessary, which is the level 3. But none are in levels 1 and 2, which are talk about major improvement or urgent improvement necessary. And Sam's team do a lot of work going out inspecting businesses, providing advice to businesses, and when necessary, they will enforce and will close businesses, and they will close businesses at very short notice if the hygienic problems are sufficiently severe. And so I've covered that in investigating complaints and food and water sampling, things like salads and water supplies. Another area of their work is health and safety and other licensing. The council has got a statutory responsibility to inspect and enforce the Health and Safety at Work Act, which is a shared role with the Health and Safety Executive. And so there are reports of injuries, diseases, dangerous occurrences that come to the council where they need investigating. My understanding is that the basic distinction is that the HSC does industrial premises, whereas we do commercial and retail premises. The governments have tried to encourage a lighter touch of inspection. So rather than doing routine inspections all the time, they do a proactive investigations of specific areas. So you look at some of the ones on there. In this year's plan, there's to look at coffee machines in coffee shops, and you don't realise until you think about it that these are under high pressure equipment, and if something goes wrong, there could be a serious incident with them. So there's been incidents of cellar doors being left open and people falling down them, so they're checking the arrangements for those. And the last one, the 2-post lift safety checks, it's in tyre dealers. Check the, you don't think that a car being hoiked off the floor, and it needs to make sure that's all managed properly. A new area, relatively new area, is in beauty treatments. You remember that the council in July 2022 adopted bylaws on acupuncture, tattooing, semi-permanent skin colouring, cosmetic piercing or electrolysis. Premises and individuals undertaking this work must be registered with the council, and we inspect them for hygiene purposes. There's also been, as we're probably all aware, a growth in the areas of non-surgical treatments, such as Botox and dermal fillers and Brazilian butt lifts and things like that mean nothing to me other than they sound horrendous when you hear about them. The Health and Care Act has given the Secretary of State power to introduce a licensing regime and is currently consulting on that. So there may be a new regime, a new licensing system for those. We also license businesses involved with... Sorry.
Councillor Whiting had a question, but I'm sure he can wait till you finish the slide.
Yeah, I'll finish this slide. This one. Yeah, so animal welfare licensing, so we license businesses involved with animals, e.g. animal breeders, and we have our own 5-star scheme on the website, so if you're looking for animals, breeders, there's somewhere to check. And the last one, the funeral, you're probably aware of the concerns in Hull. Some funeral directors were identified not to be looking after their customers appropriately, and the Secretary of State asked all authorities to inspect funeral directors to make sure that basically the right ashes and the right bodies were being supplied. So we've done some, and that's taken some learning. There's been some learning in doing that, but that's just indicative of the whole range of things that fall under health and safety, under licensing, and the environmental health officers have to pick up and have to learn about and follow through.
Thanks. My knowledge of dermal fillers and Brazilian butt lifts isn't what it perhaps could be, but I wondered, or might be in future, what work does the council do? I mean, I would imagine that if you're owning a salon in Arnold or elsewhere, you're probably expecting inspections, so you're probably up to speed and up to date with everything. Does the council do any proactive work in going out and seeking kind of sole traders, individuals who pop up on Facebook and say, I've got availability next Tuesday to give you a Botox injection?
The regime is fairly strict in terms of hygiene, and I presume that we would pick up anybody if anybody comes to our attention If anybody reports somebody in there using their garage for Botox or anything like that, then that would be picked up and would be inspected. Because at that point, I suppose you've got possibly planning issues as well as hygiene regulation issues.
Would we be relying on that being reported? I mean, I know it's really difficult to proactively go out and find people, but...
Are you volunteering to be a mystery shopper, Councillor Whiting?
No comment. But I assume that's the case, is it? We're relying on reports rather than having people trawling through the local Facebook groups.
It's interesting. I'm not sure where trawling through Facebook groups fits under the RIPA regulations, which is another issue. But I don't know whether Sam's got anything to add to that.
Yeah, we get information from a variety of sources. So yes, we do get complaints, we get reports, we get other businesses reporting traders. So we'll follow those up. And then, yeah, we do monitor things like Facebook, social media accounts, and we'll try and act on them. But as Councillor Ellis says, you've got to be careful around certain rules and regulations. But primarily what we're doing is enforcing the bylaws, the skin piercing bylaws. So there's quite a lot of activities that are regulated through that. And we've got a list, about 100 or so businesses that we're dealing with across the borough. So I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Okay, Councillor Ellis?
Considering that you do not currently need a licence to perform Botox or dermal fillers upon someone, it must be quite difficult to actually track down. I know there's been some suggestion of actually licensing the practitioners, but currently we do not need to. So it must be very difficult to actually find someone, even if they are operating out of their garage.
Of course, there are lots of complaints come from dissatisfied customers. You know, people who end up with trout lips and stuff like that. But, yeah, it is a gap. The non-surgical treatments is a gap, which is why the Secretary of State's consulting on a licensing regime.
I mean, I don't know if this is what Councillor Pope was going to say, but some people will be regulated professionally.
Well, my understanding was botulinum toxin was a prescribed agent, and therefore you not only do you have to have secure premises to keep it on, you're supposed to be licensed to prescribe it, because that's what in effect you're doing when you inject it. Dermal fillers are, I think, a completely different matter, as are butt lifts, but I have no personal experience in that. But certainly botulinum is a controlled substance in effect.
Yes, you need a medical license of one description or other to do that. It's true. Yes. Okay, shall we move on to private sector housing? So just a few of the areas that we get involved in with private sector housing. You'll be aware that we started selective licensing in Netherfield, and then moved to phase 2, which covers Colwick, Carlton Hill, Newstead and Daybrook. And selective licensing requires landlords to register and allows us to check that the landlord or the agent are fit and proper people and that the homes meet the required standard. We know that there are lots of poor quality private sector housing, but this selective licensing gives us the capacity to actually enforce to inspect, whereas most of the rest of the private sector housing, we are more reactive. So if there are complaints from tenants, then we can investigate, whereas the selective licensing gives us the ability to go in and do some investigating ourselves. I did ask Sam to provide some case studies. I won't take a lot of time on them, but I thought there's one here that I thought was particularly interested. A property in Daybrook. It's a pre-1919 three-bedroom terrace building on 3 levels with a cellar. Occupied by an elderly couple who'd lived there for over 20 years. They got particular agreement with the landlord. But when we received the application and looked at the premises, we identified a lot of health and safety risks to the customers, including excess cold, damp and mould, electrical problems, fire risk, structural collapse, and various falling elements, falls on stairs. The stairs were very badly lit and in very poor condition. There was drafty front entrance door, front windows in poor condition, the signs of damp and mould, an old boiler, poor roof insulation, extensive cracks and poor kitchen layout. So essentially, this elderly couple been living there for 20 years, and the house gradually deteriorated, and the landlord had done very little to improve it. So we sent a schedule of works to the licence holder, including improving the insulation to the property, repairs to mitigate damp and mould, improving the kitchen, provision of smoke detectors, replacement of windows and doors, and repairs to brickwork. So much work that the tenants were relocated out of the house while it was refurbished, and has made a really significant difference, significant improvement to their lives and the quality of their accommodation. Which, if we'd not had selective licensing, I presume they would have just carried on as they were, not necessarily realising what sort of state things had got into and not being in any position to respond to it. And there's lots of stories of case studies of people who've been in very poor housing conditions that we've helped. The Disabled Facilities Grant, I think we've talked about this in the past, although technically that's in Jenny Hollingsworth's portfolio. That's a capital spend of about 1.2 million that helps people stay in their homes. We work with OTs to identify needs, but manage the work. And that's things like stair lifts, level access, showers, ramped access, extensions, hoists, wet rooms, wash-dry toilets. Sometimes what people need is beyond what the statutory grant gives them. And so I get, or Jenny now gets, case studies to approve, and some of the states that people find themselves in are really upsetting. And the Disabled Facilities Grant, a relatively small amount of money, can make a big difference to people's lives and allows them to live on and stay in their homes in dignity. You're probably aware of the Anwar Ishak, who was a 2-year-old who died in December 2020. I think it was in Rochdale, Greater Manchester, and the coroner found that the death was caused due to prolonged exposure to mould. And the government introduced regulations called the Anwar's Law, which required social landlords to take things seriously, take mould and damp seriously. Citizens' Advice estimates that half of private renters suffer from damp, mould, or excessive cold, or a combination of all of them. So local authorities were asked to produce an action plan last October on damp and mould. So I've just seen an update, and we've published some guidance. We're visiting all anywhere that reports mould, and we're developing an enforcement policy. Damp, mould, and excessive cold can be a real hazard to tenants. Last one on the slide is retrofitting. Part of the national ambition to become carbon neutral, there's a government target for all buildings to be above EPC C by 2035, or 2030 for fuel-poor households. The government's sustainable warmth strategy recognises that fuel poverty is a problem faced by all households living on low income in homes which cannot be kept warm at reasonable cost. And I just find this a very complicated picture. It's mostly grant funded, But there are so many acronyms, you know, local authority delivery, LADO, and energy company obligation, and home upgrade grant. But essentially, we do our best, the teams do the best, to make the most of the money they can, the grants we can accrue from places like Midland Net Zero and working with the Nottingham Energy Partnership to go out and improve energy efficiency. We've concentrated in the poorer areas, so you'll see a number of houses in Netherfield that have had external wall cladding and solar panels, and the new government's pledged to continue this work, so we're looking to be able to roll out more. And that, I think, is that.
Thank you. Are there any further questions for Councillor Ellis? Councillor Robson-Payne?
Thank you, Councillor Ellis, for the update that you've given, which was excellent. It's good to see some of the good work that's going on to support people, particularly in private rented accommodation. I suppose just from experience that I've picked up in the Daybrook ward around selective licensing is that there's sometimes a concerted effort, and let me be absolutely clear, I think there's some absolutely brilliant landlords who are private landlords who provide decent quality homes for people and treat people properly, actually become part of families in some cases because of how good they are to their tenants. However, I have picked up that there has been in recent times a bit of a concerted effort by some landlords to put pressure on the tenants around making negative comments about the selective landlord licensing scheme, also saying to tenants that actually in some cases they're going to have to pass on the costs of the selective licensing scheme onto the tenants, which I think is not supposed to be allowed. But I was just wondering what efforts and what we can do more of to ensure that tenants know what their rights are and to ensure that that kind of activity isn't taking place, because obviously it is unacceptable and they shouldn't be passing on costs to tenants, you know, when inspections are being carried out on behalf of the council, etc. So I just wanted to ask that question. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think we can't stop them passing on the cost to tenants. But in the same way, we've had the same issue raised at the various consultation meetings we've had over the years with landlords complaining that they're going to pass the price increase onto the tenant. But we know rent's increasing anyway, and it's very hard to say whether they're absorbing the cost or whether they're passing it on. And lots of landlords do say they're good landlords, and they probably are. And we find a lot of good landlords, but equally the team find a lot of bad landlords or houses in bad condition that the landlords are ignoring. So I mean, we had at Cabinet the review of the Netherfield scheme and decided we need to extend it to a second term, because we do think there's a lot of problems with housing, and selective licensing is addressing some of them.
Thank you. I can't see any other hands up. So I was just going to remind you that if it's possible for us to have the figures on community support officers for Gedling, I think that'd be really useful, because I've had the opposite complaints made to me about the numbers going down. So I think it'd be really useful to know what the figures are, because then we can reassure residents about that. Thank you very much, and you are free to leave. So moving on now to agenda item 5, and I believe Chief Executive is going to present this item. So thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. It's good to be back. I know Tina's presented it last time, but she's sunning herself abroad, so you've got me, unfortunately. But so I'll stick to my usual thing where I pause between each risk for questions, if that's okay. So a new risk management framework was approved by Cabinet in March this year, and the new processes, including reporting to this committee, will be implemented for Q2. So in about 6 months' time, this financial year. The reason for this is that we are introducing a new piece of software that will not only facilitate easier updating by our officers, but should also produce a more automated report for yourselves for this committee. So we look forward to that from Q2. So at the moment, we stick with the traditional methodology for risk, and I'll go through each one. So currently, we do monitor the 13 strategic corporate risks, and at this point in time, 3 are classified as high risk, 5 are classified as medium risk, and 5 are classified as low risk. During Q4, no corporate risks worsened, which is good news. 11 corporate risks did remain the same, and happily, 2 corporate risks actually improved. So if I start with risk 1, this is about budget overheating. This was quite a while ago now, but Q4 is the end of the financial year, and Q4 represented the outturn. The outturn report that was presented to Cabinet last week reported a small underspend of, I think, 107,000, and therefore this risk remains at a low point in Q4. I imagine Q1, when you'll see it, it will go up again because we do have uncertainties for the first 3 months of the year, so that's why probably next time you'll see it go back up. But at the moment, as I say, it's about budget overheating, and it didn't at the end of last year, so I'll pause there.
No questions.
Okay, so risk 2 is about our long-term financial planning, and quite clearly this is our highest risk, and we're not alone. I'm sure it's probably the highest risk in every council across the country at the moment, but it certainly is ours here today. So the budget presented to Council in March 2024 showed that we need to find efficiencies of £3.5 million over the next 3 years, and work on identifying these is ongoing. So the budget approved savings in year of 800,000, and we also approved £500,000 of digital transformation savings, which I hope will result in more than that once we get progressing over the next couple of years. But at this point in time, £3.5 million is a target, which is huge. So that's why this is shown as a high risk.
So I'm just noting you've got 2 actions on that dated for August. So are they likely to be completed?
Procurement is a bit later, but there's a new procurement act which is implemented in October. That's okay. Implemented in October, and so we have changed the procurement rules, the way we operate, and also we are bringing a new procurement strategy, hopefully to September Cabinet as well. As part of the software, we are about to purchase a contract management software as well, which will help us monitor those. Because in all honesty, you know, we're all busy, and sometimes we don't meet the targets for appropriate renewal of contracts. So, you know, where you like a 6-month build-up to them to give us time to react. Sometimes we do miss them, and, you know, we're rushing around with 1 or 2 months to go. So this software should help improve that and improve that risk as well.
No other questions?
Okay, so risk 3 is about health and safety, and this currently scores as a medium risk. It has improved this quarter as several actions were completed. These include a new emergency evacuation procedure, a positive health and safety audit, ongoing site inspections, a 5-year training plan has been completed. Pleased to see a new occupational health contract now in place for staff, and even more importantly, we do monitor hand-arm vibration cases, and we've implemented new software there as well. So that's why the risk has reduced this quarter.
No questions?
Okay, so risk 4 is about staff recruitment and retention, and at this moment in time, it remains as a medium risk. Okay, risk 5 is about the use of ICT. This is another one that is currently classed as a high risk, but this should soon improve as we have recently adopted a new digital data and technology strategy. And with my senior management restructure, a number of the senior posts within the new transformation team have now been recruited to, and they are due to start employment shortly.
Councillor Ellis?
Right, I'm not sure whether this comes into this particular risk, so you'll let me know if it doesn't. But I know we've been experiencing some difficulty with our telephone systems recently, and as a local member, I've had one or two comments from residents. Where are we at with that? Is that risk reducing?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the telephone was a long-running saga. We was awaiting a part, and it finally came last week. So the telephone should be, I'm hoping, up and running again.
That's very good news. Although I should comment that I think that the difficulties has been handled very well in terms of swiftly putting people through from switchboard to the appropriate department. So thank you all for that.
Thank you for the
Councillor
positive comment. Sorry, yeah.
Hi, thank you. I was just wondering if there'd been an assessment of how vulnerable we might be to a cyber attack, especially in light of what happened in Leicester recently. I wonder if there's been any investigation, or if they've passed on what happened, if we know whether we are secure against that kind of thing.
Yes, we undertook a cyber risk last year. Obviously, we don't want to reveal the findings in public, so it was reported to the Audit Committee recently as part of the closed part of the meeting, but I'm happy to share that with you privately if you want to see it. But yeah, and we're also looking at taking out cyber insurance as well, because like you say, it can be catastrophic and the numbers are significantly large if God forbid, something happens. So, but yes, I'm happy to do that. Thank you. So risk 6 is about protection and use of the council's assets. This is also currently classed as a high risk and will remain so until we adopt a property asset management plan. So we have a lot of assets out there. We are doing condition surveys of them, but it's about the future. You know, what do we do? Do we invest in them? Do we dispose of them? Do we keep them as they are? So that's all part of the strategy that we need to work on.
No questions on that.
Okay. Risk 7 is about changes in legislation and is currently scored as a medium risk. This one has improved this quarter as we have addressed the training issue for building inspectors. So there were some new regulations that said they couldn't operate as a building inspector without passing some sort of exam. So we have got through that and you know, moving forward on that. So that risk was removed for that one. And as I mentioned a minute ago, we have drafted new procurement rules in line with the new Procurement Act that comes into force in October. Okay, risk 8 is about contractual breaches, and this remains as a medium risk simply because we don't know what's around the corner. Keep going. Risk 9 is about challenges to decisions made. Again, the compensation claims trend. At the moment, it's a low risk, pending anything else coming forward. Risk 10 is about service standards and customer satisfaction, and this remains a low risk. I've already mentioned the digital transformation work. This is now starting with a bit of motion going forward, and you know, that will look at every aspect of customer satisfaction and customer engagement, so that can only improve even further. Risk 11 is about a council's reputation, and this remains as a low risk. Risk 12 is about emergency planning. That's currently a medium risk, again, depending what issues come forward. Cyber as one was mentioned. Obviously, we have flooding issues and other things as well. So that's currently there. But we are well placed now to react, as we always have done in Gedling. We're very good at that. And finally, risk 13 is the long-term socio-economic trends. Looking forward, we're an ageing population, so should we be adjusting our focus of how we change services to accommodate that ageing population? Currently, that remains a low risk, Chair.
No further questions from anyone? No. Thank you very much. So moving on swiftly to agenda item 6, which is the Q4 and end of year performance on the Gedling plan, and that's you as well.
Thank you, Chair. So this report sets out the performance data for the Council at the end of Q4, which represents the period January to March 2024. It also covers the year-end performance for the whole of the 2023-24 year. Starting with actions, there were 69 actions included in the Gedling plan for delivery last year, and at the year-end 61 were completed, with the remaining 8 being carried forward for delivery into the current year, being 2024-25. In terms of Q4 performance indicators, there are 30 that we work to. Of these, 19 were either on or above target, 2 were slightly below target, but only in the margins, and only 1 actually missed the target. I'll come on to that in a minute. The other 8 indicators were for data tracking purposes only. Added to these are the year-end performance indicators. There are 13 of these. Again, 5 were either on or above target, 1 slightly missed the target, and the other 7 were for data tracking purposes only. The table in the report at paragraph 2.4 shows examples of particularly positive performance, and I just want to pick out 3 of those, Chair. Firstly, a number of visits to leisure centres. We do have ageing facilities, but we are still achieving some huge attendance figures. So 1.153 million visitors last year against a target of 1.060 million. So again, did really, really well on that. The second one is net additional homes provided, where we have achieved a figure of 604 new homes against a target of 497. And linked to this is the number of affordable homes delivered, where we've achieved a figure of 111 this year against a target of 60. So looking back at the 2 indicators that missed the target, that's set out in 2.5. The first one is percentage of minor planning applications processed within 8 weeks. We had a performance of 81.4% against a target of 86. There were a number of historic complex cases that can't just be sorted out really quickly, so they had an impact on the percentage of performance. Also, we had a number of staff vacancies within the planning team last year, and that all had an impact on the percentage figure and caused the team to slightly miss the target. However, Chair, I'm pleased to report that we are now back on track, and for the first time in a long time, we do have full staffing complement in planning, which is really, really good news. The second one we missed was number of working days lost due to sickness absence, where we achieved a performance of 9.88 days against a target of 9.0 days. We used to be around 10-11%, so we are lower than previous years, but we're still not quite meeting the target. Again, this is mainly due to the number of long-term absence cases, and we monitor this on a rolling 12-month basis. So even if somebody leaves the council today, they'll still be in the figures in the next 365 days as well. So, it does take time for the figures to reduce and adjust for that. But in all cases of long-term absence, we work with the person involved, and HR are a key part of our reaction to it. As a council, we do support them really well, in my opinion, and we do support a return to work as soon as they can, but at the appropriate time. So paragraph 2.6 provides a summary of the position regarding compliments, complaints and MPs letters. I'll not go through them, but they continue to be reviewed regularly by the senior leadership team. And just finally, Chair, in terms of achievements in Q4, there's a whole appendix that sets out these in a lot of detail, but just picking up the ones reported in paragraph 2.7. You'll notice there are workers working on the upper floor of the AMP in Arnold at the moment, and that has created an enterprise centre for 4 upcoming local start-up businesses. That is due to complete in November, and hopefully we'll start to advertise prior to that to get the tenants in as soon as we can. In terms of leisure, I just mentioned growth in our Learn to Swim and DNA Health and Fitness memberships, so they are increasing, which is really good news. We always try and support the Great British Spring Clean Week in March, and we take targeted action alongside our police colleagues as well to tackle crime, as well as all the stuff and weeds and things in the street. So that was really positive. The approval of the council's workforce strategy, which really sets the future for this council moving forward. And again, I've already mentioned digital transformation strategy. And the introduction of web chat, which I was really pleased to see within our customer services team. A lot of people do use it, and more people are getting aware of it, and I just think it's an excellent service. So I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chair.
So I've got two questions. I just wanted to ask you about the complaints. Do you also report on what's done as a result of the complaints? So you say that 40% were justified. So I suppose, do you also report on action or changes made that resulting from a complaint?
We do internally, Chair, yes. We probably don't report, externally, but we every quarter we go through the complaints, we sit the managers down, we talk to them why it happened, and then we have a learning points and an action plan, so we make sure we don't do that again. To be fair, at the moment, it's no secret about waste. We are struggling at the moment. We're trying to put a new system in. We've had challenges at the depot, and probably 40-50% of the complaints are around waste. We're putting a lot of work and effort in to try and resolve that at the moment. A new system, when it's implemented within the next 6 months, should really, really help. And I would hope, will not eliminate all the complaints, but certainly a lot of them should be addressed, and it should be right first time. People don't want to complain about missed bins, they don't want to complain about missed assisted pull-outs. Unfortunately, the drivers in the cab don't get that technology at the moment, so they don't know. So it's a memory test which ones need assisted pull-out. So all that will be on the in-cab technology in the new system when it's implemented. So we're about just short of 500 complaints, which is not good. It's fairly average, to be honest, across local authorities, but in my mind, it's not good. I would hope to at least half that once we get the waste system sorted.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis?
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on the new web chat system. I personally used it myself in the last couple of weeks and found it a lot easier than ringing through the switchboard and easier to get more accurate information through. I'd also like to add that I got a comment from a friend of mine who has a disability that means that she gets very anxious around using telephones, and she's been asking for this service for many years, and I was so pleased to be able to tell her that we'd actually got it and that she would be able to use it.
Brilliant. Thank you for the feedback. I'll give that positive comments back to the team. Thank you.
Okay, so I've got Councillor Sam Smith, then Councillor Whiting, and then Councillor Martin Smith.
Thank you, Chair. And this probably is a comment for the work programme that we'll talk about. But 58% of the complaints relating to waste probably reflects councillors' inboxes, to be fair, miscollections, whatever. And it's the only interaction every single resident in our borough has with the council every single week. I wonder whether, rather than talking about it now, I wonder whether we could do a quick review into hear about this new system, Mike. That's the first time I've heard of this new system. To be honest, it sounds pretty good, but let's have a look at it as a group and see, talk about that, have a look at what it's actually going to do, what you aim to do, and whether that's reflective of the real world that we see with our residents every day, and see if we can put forward any other recommendations into the waste service, because if you can cut that 58% down by 30%, you're onto a win, aren't you?
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Whiting?
Following on from that, my question, and then I've got a comment, but the question is, if a whole street of bins is missed and we have 50 residents phone up and complain, does that class as 50 complaints, or is that one complaint because they all relate to one issue?
If all 50 complain, it'll be 50 complaints. So, in that case, if we do miss a street and we need to get smarter recording what is a missed bin, and we've always had this discussion. Is it a missed bin because the lorry can't get down because of bad parked cars? I would argue that's not our fault, and we'll endeavour to go back probably the next day and the next day until we do. If it's a failure of the driver to forget to empty it, that absolutely should be classed as a missed bin. And it's getting smarter with this new technology, how we do that as well, And, we do ask people like the County Council to look at yellow lines on corners. Obviously, they're restricted in finances as well, and they need a really good business case, to be fair, to put yellow lines on, because we can't afford to put that on every corner, on every street. So, it is a constant improvement working with us and the county council as well.
Thank you. And then just a comment, if I may, Chair. Just again, I know we say this every time, but just to praise Nicola Brandt and her team for the empty homes. I see the target for last year was to bring 40 long-term empty homes back into use. Actually, 217 were brought back into use, which is actually more than a third of the number of houses that we built. So it just goes to show that building houses is important, but actually bringing empty homes back into use is important as well. So if you could pass on my thanks, and I'm sure the thanks of the whole committee, to her and her team.
I will do, thank you. Yeah, and it was reported at Cabinet last week that she's actually won an award for being innovative, trying to get a house back into use. So, yeah, congratulations to her from everyone. Thank you.
And I'm sure all the neighbours of those houses are also very grateful as well. So, Councillor Smith?
Yes, Mike, just on a similar theme to Councillor Whiting, obviously there's a lot of praise is due to officers. There's a lot of very positive performance figures there, with only a couple sort of below. With those targets being met, how do you set the target for next year? Do you set... So let's look at the number of attendances at the at leisure centres. So this year, 1,153,000. Is that the target, or are you giving them a little bit of leeway? But and hopefully you're not sticking at last year's target, though.
We asked the officers to propose an improvement, so we always look for continuous improvement. So we always want more challenging targets. Clearly, we don't want to set targets that are extremely difficult. Well, no, that's the wrong way, but, you know, out of reach. So we ask targets to be increased, you know, cautiously, but always a relative improvement. Those officers will then report that to the senior leadership team. We will challenge in most cases if we don't think it's stringent enough or whatever. We will challenge and increase that target, and then ultimately they're approved by Cabinet as well before the start of the year. So there's that three-way process. Leisure have always got to consider the impact. You know, if you take Carlton Forum, 50 years plus age, at some point people aren't going to go because it's not a good facility. It's all right at the moment, but you know, 50 years is very old for a leisure centre, and that curve does start to change. So we do monitor them on a constant basis.
Thank you.
Councillor Ellis?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm going back a step here. I want to talk briefly about the business waste collection service. And obviously that's a different service to the domestic. Firstly, how are we doing in terms of meeting our targets for business waste collection? And secondly, I'm quite interested in business recycling collection. Is that available across the borough? And if not, are there any plans for that to happen? Thank you.
Councillor Feeney?
Thank you.
Would you like to answer the question?
Is that all right? Thank you, Chair. Yeah, trade waste is part of one of the reviews. So, you know, as I said, this new system and the whole new approach to reviewing waste, every part of it, from bulky waste collection to trade waste to medical supplies waste, we're looking at the whole lot. We've got a new director due to start in the middle of October, so he'll come with some new ideas as well. At the moment, trade waste isn't as profitable as it should be, and the reason for that is it's evolved over time. So, you know, smarter councils probably give you a choice of 3 different bins. You can have Calverton emptied on a Tuesday and a Friday, and that's it. We seem to be very, very fluid. So, you know, if you want a bin collection on a Tuesday afternoon, a Wednesday morning and a Friday night, we seem to say, OK, we'll do it. Obviously, that's not efficient use of our trucks, our men and everything else. So there is part of that review that we need to do. You know, every other council makes good money out of trade waste. We don't at this point in time, so it's part of that review. Previously, when I came about 7 years ago now, we were looking at recycling for trade waste. The pricing got in the way, and we were too expensive. We weren't making any money, so we stopped the trial and didn't do it. There's more methods, modern methods now, so you have split back vehicles and things like that. So again, that'll be part of that review as well. We have to do things properly, quite right, as a council. So if we're looking in competition against a private company, they may have the driver who goes around the back, empties the truck, and then gets back in the cab and drives off. We're not allowed to do that quite rightly for health and safety reasons and lone working reasons. So straight away, our costs of labour have doubled compared to private competitors. So, you know, that's the market we're competing in at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Feeney.
Thank you. The Richard Herod, it's a significant disruption caused there by Severn Trent work. I assume that we're going to get compensation, but will we actually, the amount of people that are being disrupted there, affect the long-term viability of the centre?
So there's been a statutory responsibility put on us by Severn Trent to do the works. We had no choice but to allow it to happen, and that's what's continuing. They do say they will offer some form of compensation, but that's part of the negotiations that are ongoing. So I don't know what shape or form that will look like moving forward, but certainly negotiations are taking place there.
Councillor Pope.
Thank you. I was also going to make the same observation Councillor Whiting's made about the returning homes to use, which is a fantastic improvement. But I have a question about your response to Councillor Pope. Which aspects of the complaints and the learning from those complaints then gets out into the public domain? Because you said we did type, publicity isn't the right word, but information with the public is quite a powerful tool to demonstrate how responsive the council can be. So I just wondered what aspects actually got out into the public domain.
I think the public front-facing services, Chair, are the ones we promote. You know, if we know a road's shut, for example, we will try and promote that. And again, the new system will help that facilitate. Other things are internal learning. So, you know, if we didn't handle your benefit claim very well, for example, we wouldn't publicise that. We'd just do an internal review, share it with the benefits team and say we must do this or flag that on the system in the future. So if it's an external facing one, we will try and promote it, what we've done, but if it's an internal learning thing, obviously we wouldn't.
I think even internal can have be a powerful tool in communicating with the residents of Gedling about how seriously the council take complaints in terms of using them as a learning tool. So personally, I wouldn't restrict it to just those public facing things. Certainly in a previous life in higher education, both external and internal facing elements were used to promote the learning and the responsiveness of institutional hierarchies to that.
Okay, thank you. That's useful to learn. And as I say, part of the digital transformation journey will hopefully pick up some of that and put systems in place that will make it easier and more straightforward to deal with it. But yeah, certainly learn from that. Thank you.
Councillor Ellis.
I'd like to support what Councillor Pope has just been talking about. I am familiar with some campaigns run by other authorities, very much along the lines of sort of, it's going to be on the internet now, but at the time it was posters and things like that. Basically, you said, and then whatever the public had said, we did. And I'm just thinking this thing about missing bins or pull-outs, assisted pull-outs, that's the you said. And then the we did is that we're introducing more and improved information in the cab, or however you want to phrase it. And that seems like a classic, yeah, we're listening to what you're saying and we are responsive and this is what we've done. And I'd love to see more of that.
Okay, yes, I'd agree. Absolutely agree. You know, we have issues, probably from our colleagues over there, around street cleaning and stuff. You know, I'd love to get a digital schedule on the website and stuff, and we're trying to work on that. Trouble is, because we've got such small teams, as soon as an incident happens, we pull them off street cleaning, for example, and then you miss your slot, and then you're waiting again, and that doesn't help anyone, you see. So yeah, certainly the lessons learned from all that, especially with the new waste system again, we will be shouting about, once it's implemented, how good it is. Definitely.
I think the point is that sometimes with targets around complaints, it's very easy to measure how many you get and how long you took to respond. But actually what people are interested in is what happens as a result of the complaint they made. Yeah. So I think that was the point people were trying to make. Yeah. I think we've exhausted questions, you'll be glad to know. So thank you very much. So I think we've just got our work programme now. So if you want to talk us through that, please, Emma.
I haven't got much more to add apart from what the chair said about the sort of movement of the partners. So from our last meeting, I went away and sort of contacted the partners that you wanted to come to the committee. I've heard from all of them apart from Nottingham City Homes. I think it may be hard. I've tried twice. I'm going to keep trying. But yeah, like I said before, they have no statutory responsibility to us, so it may be hard, but I will keep trying. The other three are confirmed. We did have to move them around a little bit because of the move of the committee date, but they are coming. I did want to sort of maybe speak to the whole committee about your views on the waste service in general. As Mike said, we have a whole new system coming in, different staff, everything will be quite different. So my question was, at what point did the committee want to hear? Because my worry would be, do you want to look at it now so you can give feedback, or once it's done so you can give constructive sort of thoughts? Because I think with the sort of amount of work that's going on, I think we need to pick a time that's best for everybody rather than continuous time, because they're going to need time to actually implement the stuff that they need to do, because it is, as Mike said, quite vast. So I'd like some thoughts from the committee on when and who. Did you want to wait until the new person was in place? Did you want to have an overview of it now and then give your suggestions, or what?
So I suppose the thing is there anything we can influence if we hear about it now, or if we can't actually influence what's going to be implemented, then we're probably better off reviewing it when it's been running for some time. Does that make sense to everybody? Do you know the answer?
So we're currently trying to write a scope for what should be in a new system. Obviously not all systems can do everything, so the scope is quite important when we go out to procurement. You know, it's nothing new, every council does it, so the scope more or less writes itself, the councils that's gone digital. But I think it'd be really useful once we appoint a successful IT system contractor, whatever you want to call them, to demonstrate probably to you what it will look like and what it will do moving forward. As I say, they can show you the in-cab technology, how it works. If you complain you miss your bin, that should go straight from you by email to the driver. It shouldn't have to come to customer services, then to waste admin, then a phone call to the driver. It should just go straight there. So, you know, I think it's quite an eye-opener when we get a new system. I think that's probably a good time once we've procured a contractor.
Do you have an estimate of that so I can add it to the work programme, or not?
Where are we now? I'd probably say just before Christmas, but...
Should we maybe suggest 13th of January committee then? Because then that gives us a bit of leeway of appointment and the person being in post for a few months to actually get some ideas and get the system in. Is that agreed by the committee?
I'm seeing nods.
Perfect. I'll add that to the programme then. And then the other thing I just wanted to highlight was that I spoke to Rob McCleary, and he's happy to come to the next meeting to give you a Contacts Magazine update and how it helps and what it does. So that will be there for you, Councillor Brown, in September.
And then, unless anyone's got anything else they wanted to add to that, Councillor Smith?
Yeah, I don't want to dwell on this, but we were talking about complaints before, and I know you've asked us not to discuss this with the resident, and I think we probably know the one that's been making a number of complaints. I won't mention the name because we're probably on camera, are we? Does Mike have a comment to make to us all, just to reassure us everything is being dealt with, which I'm sure it is?
Yes, Chair.
That's fine, thank you.
Thank you. So the other outstanding issue then is the working party. that we need to have another date for. So could people send Emma their availability for September? We had agreed Mondays, but I appreciate some weeks in September might be difficult for people because of party conferences, but if we could start there so that we can have the next meeting. Okay? So I've not been notified of any other business.
It's for the funding working groups.
Yes, sorry, the funding schemes, yeah. Not been notified of any other business, so I will close the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending.